In this video, I want to introduce you to our first differential stain. A differential stain will allow us to tell the difference between cells depending on something that they do not have in common. The differential stain that we're going to discuss first is the Gram stain. The Gram stain allows us to differentiate between the two different types of cell wall configuration that are most common, especially in bacteria. So hopefully you remember from lecture, cells can be Gram positive. That means they have a very, very thick layer of peptidoglycan that is outside of their cell membrane. Or cells can be Gram negative. Gram negative cells have a very thin layer of peptidoglycan sandwiched between two membranes. And remember, that outer membrane of a Gram negative cell is going to contain that endotoxin, or the LPS. So for a Gram stain, just like always, we'll grab our slide, we'll sterilize our loop, and I'm actually gonna try a couple of different cultures on the same slide. Cells that I think should have differential Gram reactions. I'm going to do 1 Gram positive, 1 Gram negative, and 1 mixed culture. And this will allow me to determine whether or not my technique was good, because the Gram positive should be purple, our Gram negative should be pink, and our mixed culture should have a mixture of both. So for our Gram negative, I'm going to go ahead and use Klebsiella. I've sterilized my loop. Okay, I've got a loop full of Klebsiella. I'm going to go ahead and streak that out in a spot on my slide, and I'll allow it to air dry. I'll sterilize my loop. Next, what I have is that mixed, the streaked culture of Enterococcus. So I put a couple of drops of water on my slide, and remember, Enterococcus is Gram positive. So I'm gonna grab a little loopful from here with my sterile loop, grab the little loopful from the slant, and mix it up with the water, spread it around a little bit, allow it to air dry. Sterilize my loop. And then finally, I have a mixed culture that should contain some Gram positive, some Gram negative. And so I would hope that if my staining technique is accurate, I will be able to see the Gram positive cells as purple and the Gram negative cells as pink in one field of view. So I've got a loop full of bacteria, and again, spread that out on my slide, and I'm gonna allow everything to air dry. Okay, so our Gram stain slides has air dried, and so what we'll do now is do a little heat fixation. So remember, gently pass through the flame. Okay. And the first step in a Gram stain is to stain all of the cells using a direct stain. And the direct stain that we use in a Gram stain is Crystal Violet. So I'm going to cover all of my smears with Crystal Violet. And we'll allow that Crystal Violet to sit on the slide for 1 minute. Okay, so it has been 1 minute. What we'll do now is pick up the slide and rinse off all of that Crystal Violet using some water. The next step in the Gram stain is to cover the slide with iodine. Iodine serves as what we call a mordant, and what iodine is going to do is bind to the Crystal Violet and form this big complex that'll kind of get stuck inside the peptidoglycan. So we'll let the iodine sit on the slide for a minute. Okay, so it's been about a minute. We'll go ahead and rinse off our iodine just like we've done before using water. Okay. And so the next step in the Gram stain is the step that's the trickiest. This step is the decolorizing step. During decolorizing, we slowly add alcohol. And what should happen, hopefully, is in gram-negative cells, which have that really thin layer of peptidoglycan, the alcohol should help the crystal violet iodine complex wash away. But in cells with the thick peptidoglycan or gram-positive, the alcohol should not be sufficient to rinse the crystal violet away. If you don't decolorize enough, the gram-negative cells will still be purple. If you decolorize too much, the gram-positive cells will lose their crystal violet as well. So this is the trickiest step in doing a Gram stain. And so very carefully, I'm going to rinse the slide one more time with water. So very carefully, what we do is slowly drip ethanol down the slide until color stops coming off. And that should only take like between 5 and 15 seconds. There's still color coming, still color coming. Okay, it's clear. Then we'll rinse with water to get the alcohol off. And our final step is to do what we call the counter stain. And so in our case, the counter stain is going to be safranin. So safranin, what it should do is any cell that still has the crystal violet, so our gram-positive cells, will exclude the safranin. But all of our gram-negative cells, which lost the crystal violet, should take up that safranin, and they'll hopefully turn pink. So I'm going to cover the slide with safranin, and then we'll wait 1 minute and rinse again. Okay, so it's been a minute. Let's go ahead and remove our safranin using water. Okay, and then we'll put our slide to dry. So I know that in the video when I was preparing my Gram stain, I told you I was going to do 1 gram-positive, 1 gram-negative, and 1 mixed culture, and that I would show you those under the microscope. But I was so proud of my mixed culture that I said, forget it. I'm not even going to show them my single cultures. You've already seen a direct stain of what crystal violet looks like, so you know they're going to be purple. You've seen a direct stain of what safranin is going to look like, so you know it's going to be pink. But I was so proud of this Gram stain that this is the only thing I decided to show you. So my mixed culture is Enterococcus, which is the gram-positive or purple coccus-shaped bacterium. My gram-negative cells, the pink ones, were Acinetobacter bailey. So Acinetobacter is this genus of bacterium that have what is sometimes described as a coccobacillus shape. So they're not as long as something like E. coli or Klebsiella, and they're going to look kind of in between a coccus and a bacillus. And so those are all the pink cells mixed in with the purple. It's been a long time since I've done a Gram stain, and I was a little bit afraid that I was going to have to actually show you guys an image from the internet. Not an image that I took myself, but here we have a Gram stain of a mixed culture that I did myself. This is a really critical skill to have, and I'm very sorry that you're not getting the opportunity to do this with your own hands. But if you ever do get the opportunity to do this type of staining, I highly recommend that you take the time to get to learn how to do this. Because I know I gave you the analogy in class sometime last week or the week before. Just because you read a recipe on how to make beef Wellington doesn't mean that Gordon Ramsay's going to want to eat it the first time you make it. So the first time you do a gram stain, the second time you do a gram stain, the third time you do a gram stain, it may not turn out very well. But with lots and lots of practice and patience, you can develop the skills to do a gram stain properly, and you'll know you've done a gram stain properly when you see something like this, a mixed culture, gram positive and gram negative, where both cell types are the appropriate color.